Mic test, mic test. Magbibini na lang kasi hindi pa ako naliligo. Yan, ako nari. Malinis. Okay, so welcome back to my channel, and for today's video, I'm going to share how my NHS theater interview went. Napansin ko kasi walang masyadong nagpo-post ng mga vlogs about theater. Karamihan sa mga vloggers ngayon, they usually work in the ward or somewhere in the hospital. Bibihira lang ata ang theater nurses. So for those of you who are interested in moving on to the theater, then this video might help. So for my interview, I actually underwent 2 phases. Dalawang tao yung nag-interview sa akin, or rather, dalawang teams yung nag-interview sa akin. So my first interview was scheduled on May 19, 2021, and that interview focused on questions for my background. So yung purpose ng interview na yun was more like screening. They were trying to find out saan ako pwedeng dalhin. So in my previous videos, I think I've mentioned, I was given 3 choices, 3 different trusts. So my choices were in Bath, in Musgrove Park, and syempre yung third is yung Yogo. And during that time, wala akong preference. What I wanted was to leave the Philippines. Basta makarating ng UK, that's what matters to me. And yep, they sent me to Yogo. So after that, they did a review on my CV. So I sent a copy of my CV to the agency. She went on the details one by one. So she started asking questions, ano yung background ko, ano yung mga experiences ko, and I had to explain na I don't have that solid nursing experience like many people do. Kasi most of my years, I was working as a respiratory therapist. And sadly, walang respiratory therapist dito sa UK. So yung functions namin as RT is a combination of nurses, doctors, PT, they call them physio, and meron silang tinatawag na lab tech or med tech. So after that, they asked me ilang taon or how long did I work as a nurse. And I had to explain to them na after working 4 years as RT, I went back to nursing, and that's the time I started working in theater. So I had to also explain to the interviewer why did I choose OR as my experience. And generally, ang sinabi ko was I wanted a different environment kasi as an RT, I used to work in the ICU. I've always worked with intubated patients, ventilated patients, and I wanted a change of pace. And OR, an interesting place, an interesting area of work ever since I was in nursing school. Kaya, yeah, I chose OR. But secretly, kaya gusto ko ng OR kasi yung ratio ng patient compared sa ward, mas ma-appreciate mo. Kasi in the OR, 1:1. Isang patient lang at a time ang inaalagaan mo. Unlike in the ward, sometimes you can go as high as 15, or in the government hospital that I used to work 3 years ago, 1:30. NANI? So yung mga nurses doon, 30 patient yung inaalagaan, which is very stressful and, to be honest, delikado. I wanted to avoid that, kaya pinili ko yung OR. And then they also asked questions on how much I know the routine in the OR. Because I only have 1 year and 4 months experience in nursing, I had to rely on what we usually do in my previous hospital. Hindi talaga ako nag-research. Not necessarily ideal yung ginagawa namin sa hospital ko, pero yun yung information na I can readily retrieve from memory. So she started asking about the surgical safety checklist. She was testing me if I understand the pathway of the patient arriving in the OR, intra-op, and then post-op. So expected questions here. Your interviewer is going to ask you questions about consent. What is the importance of the consent? How do you obtain it? What are the first things that you need to check upon when the patient arrives in the OR? What are the pre-medications, pre-op medications? You should know what they are for, what are the usual dosages of the medications, and when and why antibiotics are needed for surgery. After that, the interviewer is going to ask you scenarios, situations sa OR na pwede mong ma-encounter at work. I got 2 scenarios during my interview. The first one is, what will you do kapag during count, napansin nyo na mali yung count? So may nawawalang instrument, what will you do? I answered her, we're going to repeat the count with my circulating. The follow-up question was, what if after nag-repeat count na kayo, wala pa rin? What I said was, I am going to refer this to the surgeon or the anesthetist so they can order a stat x-ray so we can confirm kung naiwan ba yung instrument doon sa cavity or doon sa loob ng katawan ni patient. And ultimately, you need to file an incident report. In real life, hindi hindi naman incident report ang una mong may isip, di ba? You have to, exhaust all means before you go filing an incident report. So you have to understand, dito sa UK, very particular sila sa mga paperworks, especially reporting, kasi their priority is patient safety. Prioritize people and patient safety. So the other scenario was, what will you do if you are in conflict with another team member in the theater? My first answer to the question was, I would try to settle the issue with the other person. So I will not escalate it first kasi for me, I believe na mas magandang settle nyo muna bilang dalawang professionals before it goes out of hand. And then naturally the follow-up question is, what if you cannot settle among yourselves? Then that's the time I would escalate with my head nurse or my manager so she can help us sort it out. Syempre, follow-up question again is, paano kapag hindi na-settle ni manager? So basically, ang gusto niya sigurong malaman is if I understand the chain of command and yung flow ng communication sa isang institution. Luckily, I think she was satisfied with my answer. I'm not sure though kung ano nga ba talaga yung tamang protocol. I think my answer was a safe answer. Then after that first meeting, she gave me a time frame that I would wait a certain number of weeks to receive a decision. And I received an email from HR after 2 weeks saying na I've passed the interview, but there will be a second interview with the theater managers. Move on to part 2. I had my interview was somewhere second week of July, and I was interviewed by 2 managers from theater from Yeovil. So yung mga questions nila are more scenarios, they're not really about your skill in the theater, but it's more of para siyang professional or personal na question, maybe designed to test how I work as an OR nurse. Probably that's the purpose of the questions. So let me share to you examples of the questions that they asked me. Disclaimer lang, I couldn't recall the exact questions, but they sounded like the following. So for the first question, they asked me which is my preference, scrub or working in recovery. In my previous video, I've told you about the differences in responsibilities and roles in the Philippines and in the UK. During that time, wala akong idea kung ano yung mga responsibilities ng theater nurse dito sa UK. In hindsight, I now realize that I should have done more research before putting myself in this kind of situations. In my defense, I was busy at work. I was working as an instructor during that time, and sobrang toxic, sobrang hectic ng schedule. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for my interview. So for me, I relied on my stock knowledge siguro, or ano yung naaalala ko in my previous hospital experience. So anyway, nawala na ako. Anong gusto ko sabihin? Immediately, I answered scrub because in my previous hospital, kapag sinabi mo kasing recovery, that means that you're working like a ward nurse. So yung ratio sa recovery sa Pilipinas is sometimes 1:6. You're lucky kung meron kang kasama. And you remember, you're taking care of patients who just came from theater, who are still under the effects of anesthesia. Wait lang, don't bash. Huwag nyong i-bash yung dati kong hospital. The reason for this was, we are understaffed. Walang nag-a-apply na nurse. I think you know the reason why bakit walang nag-a-apply na nurse. So, yung ratio sa OR, ganoon siya kalaki. And I remember that whenever I was working as a recovery nurse back then, I wasn't really comfortable being alone kasi nakakatakot na meron kang, let's say, meron kang 3 patient na tulog, lahat yan, compromise yung airway, and mag-isa mo. So I didn't want to experience that again. So yun, pinili kong mag-scrub kasi number 1, nandun ka lang sa field. You don't need to walk around that much. Kailangan mo lang mag-concentrate dun sa procedure na ginagawa mo. Hindi ko sinasabing tamad ako, pero like, if you work as a circulating nurse, minsan nakakapagod din yung, running back and forth. You have to assist the sterile team, and then you have to assist the anesthesiologist, tapos ikaw pa yung in charge sa paperwork. So all of these things that I experienced in the Philippines made me a bit hesitant to go to recovery when they asked me during the interview. Probably my fault. I didn't do my research. Hindi ko nga naman kasi inalam ano ba yung ginagawa ng recovery dito sa UK. So I immediately chose scrub. I also told them during the interview na kaya gusto kong mag-scrub kasi walang paperwork ang scrub nurse. Walang ina-accomplish na notes ang scrub nurse. I didn't know na dito sa UK, nagsusulat din pala ang scrub nurse. Although minimal lang naman. Pero I always thought that we have the same practice, which is again my fault kasi hindi ako nagre-research. So the next question was, why do you want to work in the UK? And why do you want to work in the NHS? In the NHS. Madaming reason bakit gusto kong mag-UK. Number one, nandito yung pamilya ko. And I haven't spent Christmas with my family since 2006. I've posted that in my Christmas video. Number two, I was interviewed during the pandemic. I think you will all agree with me that the government response during the pandemic wasn't really excellent. I'm not saying they're poor, but I'm not saying that they did it great either. So, in the health sector back in the Philippines during that time, hindi ako natuwa dun sa response ng Department of Health. I saw an opportunity to work in the UK, and I saw that the UK has a better response, it's a better system. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but still better than what we do in the Philippines. Wait, I didn't say these things. I always wanted to go to the UK kasi I'm a person who appreciates old buildings, and the UK has a lot of ruins, castles, museums, cathedrals, things that I like to see with my own eyes, like in person. And number three, I'm a big Harry Potter fan.
It's Leviosa.
And Harry Potter is a British franchise, it's a British story, novel. And I wanted to visit the places where they shot Harry Potter. And fourth, just something light that I shared with my interviewers, with the managers, was that I always wanted to learn a proper British accent. I didn't know if that affected my chances, but parang pasip-sip moves. Sincerely, I wanted to learn a proper received pronunciation accent. So I feel that my neutral accent it's not getting me anywhere. To answer the question, why did I want to work in the NHS? I did quite a research about the differences between private institutions and NHS, and I told them about it. That's how I answered the question, that in the NHS, the support is excellent. They give you a lot of training opportunities. They give you a lot of chances to grow as a professional and as a person. And that's what I wanted the most in the NHS. I'm a person who likes learning new skills a lot, and this news with the NHS sparked an interest in me. And also, my parents work under the NHS, and they've been telling me stories about the opportunities, the benefits that they got ever since they started working under the NHS.